Party going? Great.
Yep.
All right, welcome. This is Bachelor Township Special Board Meeting, Board Meeting, Monday, May 19th, 2025. Let's start with a call to order.
Mr. Fields-Bliss?
Here.
Ms. Butler-Chandler here. Ms. Wilson? Here. Ms. Hagerman? Here. Ms. Kellerman? Here. Mr. Packey?
Here.
Mr. Roseman?
Here.
Thank you.
Who's all here? Item 2 on the agenda is civic reflection. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance and follow with a moment of silence. So please stand if you are able to join us in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. In a moment of silence. Thank you. Item 3 on the agenda is the approval of the agenda. I did not hear from anybody about any changes.
I'm not aware of any.
Anyone have changes, or would we like to move forward with what we have?
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as submitted.
Sorry.
We have a motion and a second. Did you get that?
Taylor's good.
Just choose one. Sorry.
We have a motion and a second to approve the agenda as it has been presented. Is there any changes, any new questions, discussions? All right, hearing none, we'll do a voice vote. All those in favor of approving the agenda as presented, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we've got ourselves an agenda. Does anyone have conflicts of interest they'd like to disclose? Or any of you secretly Larry's brother or sister?
Not that I
Probably no.
All right, I see none. So we'll move on to public statement number 1. We have an opportunity to hear from the public, limited to 3 minutes designated for statements concerning the agenda tonight only. There will be a second option at the end of the meeting with an additional 3 minutes to talk about any topic. We will have another regular meeting too, which will have 2 opportunities to speak as well for the public. Does anybody in the public want to make a statement? All right. Emphatic no's. So we'll move on to item 6, new business. Items for introduction, discussion, strategic planning. So welcome here. We've been talking about this for a while. We're sort of doing this a little bit backwards. We're going to hopefully approve Larry's contract at the regular meeting and make sure he's not working for free at this meeting. But we thought in order to keep our timeline up and running, we should do some discussion with the board today. This would be part 1 of many parts of what we are doing, as you probably saw from the proposal in the packet. This will include opportunities to engage the public, opportunities to engage staff, and other folks in the community. This piece is just our opportunity as the board to give some feedback. The other piece of this is we're also doing that comprehensive plan with the Planning Commission and the Planning Department. Larry has met with our consultants, Giffords and Webster, to figure out who's going to do what as part of this process so we're not over-engaging our public and we're using our resources to the best. So I appreciate his flexibility in that, and I'll let him introduce himself and his credentials, but I think we're very lucky to have him as our facilitator. Take it away.
Thank you, Ryan. Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
So, for those of you who are, I can't say old timers, that's just offensive, but who are vintage township officials, you might recall me. I was at MTA for 39 years. I was the executive director for 19. Started there in 1980, but I want to even go back further than that. I grew up in DeWitt Township. I was there for almost all my life till I went to college. Lived on State Road, the dodgy end of it. And that's how I became familiar with township government. My dad was a trustee. My mom was an active volunteer. And I loved township government, and especially how much public participation was part of the culture of townships. I could even say that I've been scarred by Bath Township because I have a scar under my nose that I got in a barn fire on Nichols Road when we did a mutual aid run. I'm also a firefighter over in DeWitt Township and on the planning commission. And so that became sort of my focal point until I decided I was going to get into county government for a while, but then came back to MTA from 1980 until I retired in 2019. While I was at MTA, I was the executive director, and maybe a bit of an unusual one. MTAs and other associations have executive directors that, they're not always necessarily hands-on, but I like to stay busy. I taught a lot of classes. I wrote a lot of things. I wrote a lot, even some of the books that MTA still carries in their library cell, I authored. So I've really been involved and loved the nuts and bolts of government. When I retired, I started doing consulting. I'm still essentially retired, but I've been, did a consulting relationship with an organization called Public Policy Associates, and did some strategic planning for local governments and other, mostly NGOs with them. And in the meantime, I've done strategic planning, policy development work for other not-for-profits, state associations, and a smattering of local governments. So I have been gradually in the last couple of years phasing down a lot of that and focusing on doing other things. I'm a docent at the State Historical Museum, so come on Sunday, it's free, and I'm glad to give you a tour. Which is my real passion right now. But I still do, I love strategic planning. I was once, if you had asked me back in my early career what I thought of strategic planning, I probably would have given you some snarky comments about it. That it's the sort of thing organizations did when they had nothing better to do. And then I got elected to a school board. And we basically, hardly anything came up that we didn't have knockdown, drag-out fights. Oh, they were civil, but we fought over everything. Every last dollar, how it was going to be spent, and priorities, and it's like the board was always kind of at odds with each other. Until, I do not remember exactly why, but we decided to do a mission statement. And they even asked me to facilitate it, even though I was a member of the board. I kind of had a reputation for being fair. I think they understood that I wouldn't use it to skew it to something that I would like. I'm good at facilitating, getting everybody's thoughts together and synthesizing it to something. And that process really changed the board, and it surprised me. I didn't expect it. But having that whole conversation about what are we here for, we stopped arguing about whether we're going to favor the music department or the sports department or, who's going to get what. And we really started focusing on quality education and measuring and what does that actually mean. And when we did have a disagreement about something, we had now a true north. We had a compass. You could look at that mission statement. It was written well enough. It wasn't just like a marketing phrase. It was meaningful. And it was something that we'd all bought into. And we could look to that mission statement and say, which of these options best serves the mission statement? And that became the board's hallmark of how they made decisions. And from that point on, we started thinking, well, there's other things we could do. So we started doing more strategic planning, policy-type governance, and I like to think that when I left that board after 8 years, it was a very cohesive board, and I understand that the school board still uses much of those same tools that we developed 25 years ago. So I really do believe in this process. I also believe that strategic planning 20, 25 years ago was a great idea that was often executed poorly. Strategic plans would come in these great, nice packages and graphics, and it looked impressive, but it was very inflexible. It was sort of meant to go on a shelf somewhere and be looked at. It was more about an organization bragging that they had a strategic plan than really using it on an ongoing basis for making decisions. And then it was how do we monitor it, and that, maybe Karen even remembers how terrible that was, when we really had all of these extensive key performance indicators, and the staff just got so bogged down in documenting compliance that took precedence over actually improving and moving towards that strategic plan. So I've evolved too over time in terms of how I've focused on strategic plan and learned from what others have felt that strategic planning can be done and done well. So number one, I commend you for doing it. There's a lot of local governments don't. It's a hallmark of good business practices in the private sector and in non-GOs and in the not-for-profit world, but government kind of stays away from it. I have my own reason. I think I've kind of figured out why, and maybe you've got some ideas too. But the bottom line is I do think that strategic planning improves local decision making. For one thing, you don't just get attracted to the shiny penny of the day, or pressure to let's buy money, let's do this, let's do that. You start thinking, if nothing else, when we spend $100,000 on this, that means there's $100,000 that we will not spend on something else. And if you haven't kind of lined those things up and made choices based upon some predetermined criteria that you've all agreed on, then you aren't necessarily going to be, in fact, it's almost guaranteed, you're not going to necessarily be getting the highest and best use out of your taxpayers' dollars. So strategic planning does not have to be terrible. In fact, I think it's kind of fun. The groups that I have worked with I think that they have found the process to be enjoyable, sometimes even regretting that it was done, but you can't have fun forever. And at some point you got to implement what you come up with. So I think it's helpful in that regard. It provides some stability to the organization. It definitely is a great tool for fiscal stability. When you put a budget together, there needs to be explicit ties. The budget process is tied in with the strategic plan. The strategic plan drives the budget. Absent a strategic plan, your budget tends to look at what did we spend and raise last year. Okay, the money's, we're going to get 3% more, so who's going to get 3%, who's going to get 4%, who's going to get 2%. It's everything. All decisions are really incremental rather than really strategic. And it's really difficult to make strategic changes. This board, for example, has new people on it, people who have been on for a long time. But as you folks get new people on the board, new people in the community, Bath Township is not the same community that it was when I was in DeWitt 40, 50 years ago, by any means. DeWitt Township's different. So it's a way that strategic planning can help guide this board explicitly tune into the community, its needs, its wants, its expectations, use your own expertise and knowledge about the community, and put together a system of governance that really works best for people and gets the highest and best use for the money that you've got. So that's my theory of strategic planning. Now, every strategic plan I have done is different. I don't have a template. Well, I do borrow a few things from the stuff that I've done before. I'm not crazy to just always reinvent everything brand new. But every organization is different. Ryan has posed some challenges and some objectives here that are different than other organizations. The role of the board versus the role of the staff is a big difference from one organization to the other. And in particular, for the local government groups, local governments that I have been involved in strategic planning with, the role of the public in the process is something that differs from one to another. I've worked with some townships and a city that the governing board felt, and I don't have any objection to this approach, said, you know, we've been elected, we ran on a platform, people know what we stand for, we know the community. We can make these decisions based upon what we intuitively and empirically know about our community. And they put together an absolutely fine strategic plan. There are others that I've been involved with that have wanted to have direct engagement of the public. And if there is a best practice for public sector strategic planning, it is, I think, to have an element of it where the public is invited directly to come in and provide input into the decision making. So the way I would, and Ryan was certainly amenable, if not enthusiastic about that approach. Don't mean to speak for you, but if you disagree, then that's not but what we thought we would do, there's not a huge component, it's pretty small, but that was really more, I think the smallness of the component of public input was driven by the original timeline of having something done by July 15th. There's a lot of other steps that would need to be done. The public's purpose is really to provide some information, and clearly this can be done on a whole bunch of different levels, including public surveys and a series of meetings and meeting with stakeholders. What I had recommended to Ryan was kind of a minimum level of public input, mostly because driven by the time frame. And I will also say this part of shepherding a large-scale public process is not in my wheelhouse. There are others, and when I've done this with other organizations, it has been, we've outsourced that to a third party, and there's others who would be involved if you wanted to do something on a much grander scale. I don't have a website, for example, for people to generate input and surveys, and so this is what we had envisioned here was one open house or a town meeting, very similar to what a lot of townships do, like a public hearing, only much less formal than a public hearing. And the original proposal was, well, we would, at the very least, have this discussion with you guys. That would be, what do you want to know about your community that you'd like to have verified, validated, or at least hear directly from your public on? And build it around that. And if you didn't have any ideas, I mean, I have been involved in other town meetings, and there's standard questions and things that others have done. In fact, I generated a handout that hopefully you got ahead of time that has some questions that typically might be asked in this kind of a setting. So let me just stop there. That just sort of framed what we're here for. We can go back and talk about the strategic planning process, or why this, or why that, something that you saw that kind of puzzled you, or you don't agree with, and have to chat about. But ultimately, when we get done here by 6 o'clock, the outcome that I'm looking for is to hear from you what you want to know from your public, and then I'll put together some kind of exercises or facilitation or discussion plans for how we might get that from the people who were to come to that town meeting. Don't say I can't talk, so that's we'll let it there for the time being.
So you just want like questions that we think you should be asking our public?
Right, now we are, there's 7 of you, and this is, there's a time constraint. So there may have to be a little consensus building even here. Plus, part of the game plan is to do this in conjunction with the public input of your comprehensive land use plan. So that, the coordination, facilitation, the logistics of all that's been outsourced to Giffel Webster. So, which, by the way, I'm fine with. I don't have any issue with that whatsoever. The only thing I do say is that I don't have control over the time frame. And we've had a discussion with them. I had thought by now they were going to provide sort of an outline, a plan, what they're going to do, so I would know what questions, because there's likely to be some overlap. So your idea of consolidating this makes sense, and I'm all on board. But on the other hand, I've not heard anything from them since we had that meeting. So I'm at a bit of a disadvantage, and typically when I put a proposal together, there's at least windows of each of, there's 11 steps in this, there's a window of when that would happen, so there'd be some finality. Ryan and I had talked about trying to have this done by September 15th, but with no real control over when that initial step takes place, I don't really have a lot of control over the timeline either.
Is there a reason why they're not here also?
They're your client, and they're
That's
not,
through the planning
that's not my,
Who said that?
Isn't that through the planning commission?
You can't answer.
Yeah, so that's through the planning commission, that's their comprehensive.
Yeah, they won't be walking alongside
No.
us on this process, but there will be points of overlap. And perhaps, Karen, do you know if Miles got anything from Giffords about when the town meeting would be held?
I don't think that he did, and he was off this week, so I was going to introduce him to Larry, and he was off, so.
The whole week?
Yeah,
Yes,
that's
the whole week.
Do you have the contacts for Giffords that you could poke up?
I could do that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
We'll wait.
Right now.
That's not gonna happen right now.
So, if they're going to actually write the plan, is that correct? This,
I hope not.
well, I'm sure, I thought you were writing.
Right, so the coordination is occurring with Giffords Webster at the point of public input, which is only at the initial stage of our process. So they had in mind some process of reaching out to the public, which is good. I would probably, in the absence of that coordination, would likely have had maybe some questions that they're going to do as well. What's your vision for the community? Your choice between community development and preservation of natural resources are things I might recommend to pulling in if we were just doing this alone. I fully expect that they'll be asking questions very similar to those, so there's no need to do it twice. So there'll be some pieces that I think we'll both want to tie into, but they're taking the lead on those questions. Mainly, I think anything dealing with interest, I would assume, without seeing what they want to do, that they'll be looking at infrastructure and natural resources. Anything dealing with land use will be their bailiwick. Mine would probably focus on programs and services. Police, fire, your EMS, because I think that's on your table. Even though it's private sector, it's a public issue. You've got senior citizens and other sorts of things that I don't anticipate would be a focus of a land use plan, and those would probably be the ones that we'd be pulling in.
So, Ryan, when will Gittel and Webster be in here to educate us?
I don't know that they will.
Okay.
Again, they're going to work with the planning commission, not us. And their job isn't to provide us with anything, but to host that town hall meeting.
Okay.
That's one of the nexus points between the strategic plan and the comprehensive plan.
That's where maybe that gray matter in my head is from when I was on the planning commission. That's in there.
Yeah.
And so I just trying to get it all in a row, if you will.
Yeah, I mean, that sort of served as the kickoff point. So Karen's going to poke them this week to find out if they've got dates or where they're at with that, since Miles is out, and we'll push them along. But I think it gives Larry time to continue to prep and get ready for the other pieces of the puzzle, which you, I'm sure, saw in the packet.
Yeah. So he said that for this year set out are seven categories, if you will, that we'll go for.
Yeah.
You had mentioned X amount of
Yeah.
categories that Gittel and
No, this is his handout.
well, this is his.
Yes.
All right. I'm all
No, I appreciate that. And this is complicated. I'm glad you asked, and it's a lot of pieces. I won't say they're moving pieces, but I want to make sure that everybody understands the process, especially make sure I understand, because we all need to be on the same page.
Well, definitely, that's one of the reasons why that's kind of confusion, in that I think they very much should have been in contact with you, you know, and working together with you instead of totally, now.
We'll get there.
Yeah,
We'll get there.
yeah,
We want to do this, you know,
We'll
we
get
want to
there.
start.
Yeah,
They've already
I'm
talked,
not,
they're
I'm
just
not throwing
waiting.
aspersions on them.
Yeah.
It's only just expressing the reality that I'm reliant on their work at this point in time.
So I prodded Miles, and he said that they're shooting for the end of next month. So this is May, so we'd be looking at the end of June. They Gibble Webster.
For what?
The town hall meeting.
The town hall, the public meeting. And that they think that is an achievable timeline, and he should be able to lock in a date when he's back in the office.
So they're saying to have the town meeting at the end of May?
June.
End of June.
End of June.
Yeah, I would hope so.
Okay,
Yeah, to me, that's like the latest that we would want to.
okay.
This is a town hall meeting, not here, correct?
Right,
Right.
to collect information.
So before that happens, I'll need to see what they're planning to do, and then sort of figure out what they're not doing that I need. We'll have to kind of work around, trying to make sure that we're not overloading the people who are there. There needs to be some coordination between them and us, but I'm very sure that can happen.
So are you thinking maybe you'll be part of the town hall meeting to
I'm sorry?
do you think you'll be part of that town hall meeting? Since
Yeah.
everybody will all be coming?
Right.
You get your questions answered, plus they can get some of their questions answered?
Exactly.
Okay.
So, for example, I haven't received your input yet,
Right.
but we're building to that. But for example, what often happens is you want to know, many organizations in townships would want to know, what do people think about all of our services, police, fire, and the rest. So we might ask them, we would do like a polling at the event where we provide them with sort of a matrix of how important you think this function is and how well do you think we do it. And then you get relationship. You ask people to put a dot someplace or a sticky note on this graph where you show the relationship. Some people would be in a quadrant where there's high importance and high quality, or high, very important, but it's of low quality. Well, those are the things that you might want to focus on. Or it is low importance, and low quality. Maybe you want to change the quality element of it, but if it's low importance, and not important and pretty high quality, maybe that's something that you're spending more money on than what you really need to. So it just, provide you with that kind of a snapshot would be something we would likely do as one of them.
Do you, in your surveying, try to get a sense of what people are then also willing to pay for? Because a lot of the things that everybody wants, trails and recreations and sidewalks and parks and events, all cost money, mostly money we don't have at this point in time. And, I said, well, other communities have this, they have that. Well, they also have maybe special millages to pay for those extra things that they have. So in my regular job role, we do a lot of surveying of our staff to see what they want, but it always comes with, but this is a cost. There's a cost to it. Would you rather have this, or would you rather have more money in your paycheck? You know what I mean?
Right.
So I think that sometimes that data is great of what people want, but how do they want us to get that to them, I think is also what we are looking for on the Board of Trustees.
That was on my list too. It's not that I think we want to millage or tax people to death, but
Right,
we
but
do it
maybe
again.
they are willing to pay for
Right,
it,
right.
or maybe there's a hard line that, no, we don't, we're happy with. If we gotta pay more, then we're happy with what we've got.
Yeah.
That's, I
Yes,
think,
I agree.
Yeah, well, it's fair to ask that question. In fact, you don't. Maybe people would think that would be an omission. So I don't know that I had that question, but I don't find it a problem to bring that. All of it is going to be a bit of a caveat. Is that first off, understand that a town meeting is a self-selected group, so you're not necessarily getting any sort of representation of the community. Some questions, these are going to be sort of questions that you would not expect somebody to have expertise on, like, so are you satisfied with the 800 millihertz radios that our police and fire departments use, or should we be looking at some other tech? No, we don't go there. But we do look at things like, what are values that are important to this community? When you think of a particular word describing the township, you try to get people focusing on things like that. They give you insights of more about what's in their heart than what's in their head. The other thing about a tax question, which I'm not trying to dissuade it, other than just sort of asterisk it, is oftentimes people's default is no, and you need to sell it, and there may not be if you actually got a response of yes, we would be willing to have our taxes raised or pay user fees for this, you've almost got a sitting duck there that you haven't paid attention to get that kind of a reaction at this setting. But I'm not. Let me, some kind of question along that line. More like, do you feel you get good value for your tax dollars by Bath Township? Might help you. Might be another way of understanding if there's capacity there between current tax rates and what they might be willing to pay. I'd definitely play around with that.
Yeah, and I think there's different levels of that. Like if you asked about police and fire, they probably would say, oh yeah, they're great. But then if you asked about recreation type things in other categories, I don't know that the response would be the same. So I think that there's probably areas where they're happy and then areas where they'd like to see growth. But that's also where it's going to cost more money.
Yeah. And it's very predictable, too, that public safety is fundamentally, in Maslow's hierarchy of needs, it's like right at the base. And everybody is going to go there as a high importance. No community ever says police and fire is not important.
That's wrong.
Let's say
Eaton County.
Yeah.
No, I'm a president of Eaton County.
I was just like, I kind of think that push didn't pass.
Yeah, there's more nuance than just we don't want police protection there.
That was scary.
Yeah, there's way more to it than that. It's more about, I think, how the politics and how the county board framed it. It's sort of, for those of you who are old enough to remember when school boards basically said, increase our millage or we're going to get rid of buses and band and football. And there's an element of that, well, what else have you looked at? Have you reordered your priorities? Have you, that part it was all focused on, I think that was a big part of it. Yeah. I don't think Eaton County people don't care about law enforcement.
Okay.
Oh, that's still counter to what they voted. And these were the ones that voted.
Well, I guess we will just have we just might have a difference of opinion on that you will find, overall speaking, generally speaking, the public cares about police and fire, and I'll just say that's as far as I was taking that argument.
No, I'm just saying it's a fascinating argument, if you will, because I'm scratching my head as to why they turned it down 3 times respectively. They've had to lay people up and fire people, yet they can, I guess you'd have to say. And for what reason, we really don't know. Of course, they're just, that could be something that we may run into in the future. That, classrooms.
That just, not to go off on a counties, Washtenaw and Ingham got rid of their road patrol and said the townships have to pay for this. If they don't have their own police department or they don't have a contract with us, they're going to have to pay for it themselves. And that's when the phrase "going bare" came up. And many townships decided they really didn't need a dedicated road patrol. Williamstown Township contracted with Meridian. So in some areas they did dig down and pay more for it. But there is in rural counties, there's a sense of safety that you don't necessarily need to have. That element of road patrol, I think, is also a piece of this. Because Delta Township, which has their own dedicated contract, it did pass 52%. It was the rural part of the counties that where that didn't pass. But anyway, back to what would you like? Yeah.
So I'm interested in what people feel is missing. I think there's this push and pull in the township where some people want the stuff here and some people want the stuff elsewhere that we can access either way. And if we want the stuff here, it comes at a cost and we have to figure those things out. But if the township is comfortable with the stuff outside of the township and they'll just engage in that way, then we should be spending time talking about trails and this and that. But that, I feel like we get a very mixed message from the public on that. Some people don't want to change anything, and then some people are sort of demanding, like, this is 2025, we want 2025 level services and opportunities here.
On that note, to talk about something that I've talked about a lot in the past decade is specifically the Parkway Trail area. But now that I've been elected into this position, I think, well, not only could that be done, but if we had a Parks and Green Space Commission, like I've advocated in the past, you could go way, way beyond the Parkway Trail concept. And you could have the pathways along the north side of the lake. You could have the bathrooms at the beach. You could have an improved beach. You could have an improved recreation area out on Upton Road. And these are all taking advantage of township properties that we have already had. And in one of the past meetings, I stated that we haven't had a new park in Bath. I graduated in 1972, and I was trying to remember when, I think, Fletcher, Robson Fletcher, I think that was the last park, if you will. Correct me if I'm wrong, Karen, but you've been here a little while. And we've done absolutely nothing whatsoever other than buy 20 tons of sand and throw it on the beach. Nothing, recreation-wise. And, you can replace the port in place at a playground, but I mean, that was a liability thing. That's why we did that. And that's a grand thing. I was instrumental, and so was Judy and Meg, instrumental on bringing the nice playground to Wiswasser Park and helping with that financial responsibility. But since then, I mean, it just, no, we don't want that. We have had, you don't know this, but we have actually been assigned by this group in the past to, this is when I was on Parks and Rec, and the Park Lake Advisory Board, having a meeting, a town hall, if you will, about that. And it's been recorded, she's the one that, Kate is, she told me that I talk too much about this. This process that you're speaking about, we went over it, and this is just a macro in the community, but it could be, a helper to the community in multifaceted ways if we could bring it to fruition. And it would focus on just those things that are not quite absolutely necessary, but definitely necessary to fulfill a growing community that wants various amenities, to recreate with.
I do.
I just don't want to see us,
Yes, sir.
I'm sorry, my dad would say peeing up a road, but you all get that vision. That's what we've been doing for the last 25 years. And so this,
And Gibbles Webster may be addressing that recreation piece. It strikes me it might fall into on their side of the ledger.
yeah. I didn't know how much you would get into that, and then the municipality side. It's all municipality, but
Right.
the non-essential versus.
I'll wait and see what they're doing and see if they're addressing.
That's a good idea.
And with him bringing that up, that's where Kate comes in. That's where the cost in the millage, we don't have money to fund any of that. So that's kind of where I think she's asking if the people of the township want a millage for upgrading parks. This is where,
Right.
they'll have to pay for it because we don't have the funds for it.
But there's one stickler is that you have to find out if they will.
Correct. And that's why Kate is asking if that could be one of the questions.
Yeah, right. I just didn't want to rehash something.
Right.
I mean, we have went through this process before, and the public, the selected public. What did you call that? When you have a public meeting, you get a what? Cross-section of the public?
It's self-selecting because there's so many people that show up that.
And, and that's,
Do you have any dedicated villages?
No.
Police and fire.
what about the library?
That's not ours.
It's not ours.
That's not what?
It's not the township's.
It's not our money, it's theirs.
Oh, public
I
safety.
mean, it's dedicated money that the people in Mass pay.
Yeah, but it's also,
That's the library.
there's a bunch of villages that aren't ours,
Yeah.
but the only one we have is police, public safety.
That is ours.
Yeah, and it's for both police and fire?
Public safety, yeah.
And it don't cover the expense of police and
I'm sorry?
fire. And it don't cover the police and fire.
Right,
We have to subsidize,
still subsidize.
same way with our roads, we have to subsidize them. The county don't put their roads in, we have to put in ourselves.
I do, definitely. I think a question along the line of, could you, under some circumstances, support a dedicated millage for any of these services? And, maybe just list all of them, see, have them check which ones would be worth paying more for if there was an enhancement of services to go along with it. I'm on board with that. I think we can do that.
Well, I definitely would not be on board with any voluntary tax that did improve quality of life.
Sure.
Necessarily. So,
Great, Sharon's gonna murder you if you don't let her talk.
I just heard that.
See, now you can bring me back to Eden County. That's the problem. Is that they sold it on maintaining rather than on enhancing. Point well taken.
But now I gotta wait
Yeah.
get this to go through next time.
The one thing I was astounded by and wish to comment on is that I know a little bit about mechanics and stuff, that our firemen are running around on 20-year-old tires, that I find all one would have to do is blow out a front tire. It was not funded, it was not horrifying to think of front tire blowing out on a truck full of water. He's gonna roll it and kill everybody. And for that to happen is mind-boggling to me. And I don't know where it's fault-wise, but man, there are some things that gotta take priority. And tires on a fire truck is number one.
I think that's been fixed.
Okay.
Well, but Cheryl, you brought up something that I didn't explain very well, and so I appreciate this. This public input is not the sole source of information. So it's one. In addition, there is a process that I use, public policy uses it too. I can learn it from that. Most of you are familiar with SWOT analysis. So that's you have people identify strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. My proposal, which we use and I use, is SOAR, S-O-A-R. First off, it's a little more affirmative, but it is strengths, opportunities, aspirations, and results. we will have in a gap analysis where, what's the difference between what we aspire to and where we're at. So your department heads will do that separate from the public, separate from you guys. And you'll get that input. So for example, your fire chief has an opportunity to say, I don't know if we'll talk about tires, but we would definitely we aspire to be compliant with Part 74 of MIOSHA, all the safety requirements. I gotta believe MIOSHA's got a problem with 20-year-old tires that are about ready to burst. I mean, you gotta change the rims every 6 months. So the point is that those sorts of discrepancies between what we aspire to have, a safe environment for our firefighters, and where we're at, you'll get that input coming from your departments. And frankly, that's probably going to be more granular and more helpful to you in your strategic plan than what you get from the public.
Is the board not responsible for the departments? Is that not what we're about? It's whatever we have in police and fire and Parks and Rec and whatever is coming from this group. It's our responsibility, in my head, one way or another. So a failure in any department is the responsibility of this group, in my head.
No argument, other than you need to be informed. You need to know what those gaps are. And this process helps bring forth things that hopefully your chief and other department managers have brought to your attention before. But if they have, why didn't you deal with it? But at the very least, you're getting it all at once, and you can prioritize, because you may not be able to meet these goals, all of them, but you can prioritize which ones are the most important to you.
I think something that Sherry's hitting on is, and I don't know if it's a question or I'm not sure what to do with this information except for say it. We have all of these things like under the hood that we are realizing need to be fixed. They're not sexy, they're sometimes not easily understood. These are the reasons we don't have money for a park. These are the reasons we don't have money for these other things. You know, we have to fix our pension plan, we have to fix our health plan, we have to fix our fire department. It's hard for the public to understand these things that we are just learning about and discovering. And that's why it feels like it's no fun, right? Like it's just like, I think all of us would rather do the fun, like let's build parks, let's do great things. But instead it's like, let's fix a pension that should have been fixed 30 years ago that the board at that time gifted us. And now we're going to go to the health plan that the board at that time gifted us. And it's,
Fire trucks.
yeah, it just feels, to me, I feel like incredibly responsible to take care of those things. But meanwhile, the public are like, let's do big things. And it's like, I'm with you. We got to fix the pension. We got to fix these other things first. I don't know if that's a public engagement question or what, but I do think it's something that looms over these things. It's not that these people don't want to do these things. In fact, I think we all have big plans for things, but we just have to fix the undercarriage first.
Right. Well, the nice thing about a strategic plan would be this. Among the value of it is at the end of the day, when it's all done, and you get a approach from the public, somebody's at the podium and they're saying, we want a new park over in this part of the township and we're underserved with this or that. At least you could say the board has gone through a strategic process. We've looked at that, we've looked at all the other things. These are our highest priorities and here's why. It's not simply, they may not like the answer, but at least they'll know that it's been thoughtfully arrived at, as opposed to just hearing no.
Yeah. Do you have any other questions for us? Are there any other comments? I want to make sure we leave time for public comment.
The other short part was, learning that we have 2 fire trucks that are both too old, and we haven't, for the last 20 years, budgeted for $2.5 million worth of fire trucks that we didn't set aside, and so that now here we are, poof. And that's
So these are the
sad.
things that work
We have to work toward the
doing that.
future and say, okay, this is the past, now plan forward and
So your
put those things in our
Your
strategic plan.
strategic plan may also include a sinking fund for funding fire protection. But for or you can go out and bond them. I mean, there are ways that you can.
Well, and they've been in other plans, they've been like in the capital improvement plans, that is part of another process with the planning commission. So it's not as if they don't exist somewhere, they're just not speaking to the other plans that are being worked on currently.
Does the strategic planning process, in your experience, ever coordinate with the school district? I ask that because I just have had similar conversations with the superintendent and some of the school board. They are in the middle of a strategic planning process. They are in the middle of asking money and putting a millage on the ballot. And in a lot of the community's minds, those two separate entities get merged together because although it's school money, they come here to vote on it. We collect it. We run recreation, which involves kids, there's a lot of overlap in some of those areas that in the community's mind, I think those two entities often get melded as to one. But if we're thinking, well, what if we might ask for some money? And they're thinking, what if we might ask for some money? Shouldn't we all be strategically planning these asks together to best benefit both groups, at least at the same table one time?
That was the primary thing that I just couldn't get through my head when I decided to try to make a difference in the community. I didn't understand it. I'm thinking, why doesn't this group involve the school board? I mean, why aren't they they're an integral part of the community and of the municipality and the governing of all these people that live within the confines of that township? I'm thinking, why the hell aren't they talking to each other? I've never
Especially when you have public
50
safety,
years,
there's a lot of overlap there as well. So,
Well, that's a provocative question.
on 2 for 2?
And you may not like my answer, but my answer is to approach this way. Strategic plans mean strategic. So what does strategy mean? It means that at the very, you're focused on a vision, what it is we ultimately want to be. We want to talk about a mission, which is what do we do in terms of like programs and services to achieve our vision. Then we set intermediate goals, 3 to 5 years, and we're not doing 30 or 40 of them. We're going to do 5 or 6. Very narrow. What are our primary priorities? From that point, then you have to come up with, from these goals, 3 to 5 years, these are reaches, not operational projects or tasks. It's not, we're going to build a park. That's not strategic. That needs to serve some kind of a broader vision of the township. So when it gets to, we need to collaborate with the school district. We need to have intergovernmental contracts with surrounding communities. Those are means. Those are ways we achieve our goals. So that becomes not strategic, that's operational. So setting, this plan probably will not drill down that deep. It might imply, and there might be some commentary or suggestion that the board pursuing intergovernmental contracts or something like that. But frankly, that's not strategic, that's operational. Otherwise, this thing becomes gigantic and detailed, and it loses its value when it becomes too granular. Not that your idea isn't correct, and especially when we talk about recreation programs, that's almost low-hanging fruit, but it's probably not strategic.
I argue that it is extremely strategic, especially long-term, because if you have quality recreation, non-motorized trails, things of that nature, to better the quality of life for your residents, that's a great strategy for future growth.
Okay, but you're using the term strategy different than strategic. And so I'm going to tell you,
That's where the word strategic comes from.
so this is going to be kind of harsh. But if you're going to hire me to be a consultant, my job is to keep you focused on strategic.
Okay.
And if it becomes strategic is going to be whatever we want it to be, I don't really want to do the project. You'll find somebody else to do it, but my job is to really make sure that this is focused at that 20,000 foot level. 3 to 5 year goals and objectives. It doesn't become a list of projects. That should come later on from the because you don't have enough information to decide whether this trail or that trail ought to be built because you haven't done the work to really look at which of all these options really fulfills our vision.
What would a strategic piece be that maybe building a new park would fall from?
That's fair. Let me think about that a moment. So you're talking about quality of life. It is the vision of this community to provide for something related to the amenities attractive for people with children or families or something like that. Are we going to be family focused or are we going to be industrial? Well, you're going to choose to be family focused. So that becomes kind of the vision. The mission is we're going to provide, in addition to public safety, we're going to provide recreational programs. The goals, the 3 to 5 year goals is that we will have equitable access to parks and recreation programs. Equity defined as geographic, or we will take advantage of untapped natural resources to build on our park system. So then it becomes to whomever is charged with fulfilling this goal, and I don't know who that is, but they then come up with the tactical plans, which then becomes we're going to extend 3 to 5 miles of trails, we're going to have riding trails, we're going to have more organized sports, whatever that may be. They then come up with the operational that is built into the budget and for your approval.
It's an enhanced, it's been a fact, I can show you the figures, but enhanced parks and recreation in a community can directly influence home prices.
Sure.
I don't think he's arguing with the point of the parks being important. I
And I'm
think
just
he's
saying
saying that, like, our goal is to do the bigger piece, and then in our structure, because we have a robust staff and a staffed model, they would be the ones who would take the strategic plan and build out the plan and say, here's the budget I would like because I'm going to do what the board has asked us to do, and then that comes to us, and we work through the process. But we have to give that direction. I think our staff has not traditionally felt the ability to dream, the ability to put their own thoughts and plans in place. I think they felt really tied to each decision that the board makes. And I think the more we move away from that, the better it will be long term.
Yeah. I've said it before indirectly, but I think just by maybe ineptitude, I don't know, but over the past 20 years, they've allowed that philosophy, if you will, to allow the superintendent to do all of those obligations for the community.
What do you mean?
I mean that a lot of those projects didn't go by or didn't come to fruition because, I'm sorry, but staff didn't like it. I think that's, and I'm speaking in the past, and I'm not speaking in derogatory to you, but I think that the boards of the past have relied too much on her to take up the slack. I say her position. And just by default, not doing anything, sitting on their hands, she's certainly not going to let the ball drop. She's going to do what she thinks best, and that's what she gets paid for.
Well, our tools to fix that are the budget and the hiring and firing and reviewing of gear.
Right.
So I think that those are the pieces that we need to get into the weeds on, not the, the nitty-gritty of the project.
I guess what I'm trying to say is that this board needs to do what they were hired to do and get what you to do.
Of course.
Instead of just saying, what does she want?
Ray, what you described is very common.
Oh, I know.
In local government. Maybe the most common model is for the boards to sort of wait for the staff to bring forth proposals, and then they sanctify them or shoot them down.
Well, and I think that's because in reality, she's the only professional. In reality, she's the only professional sitting here. We're all just, well, no offense to the and the treasurer.
I'm like, I have background.
They're employees, if you understand. I mean, they're literally hired because they are quote unquote professionals in what they do, and we're just nobody.
But here, the strategic plan is the vehicle for the board to lead. Absent a strategic plan, like Lewis Carroll said, and if you don't have a plan, any road will get you there. And so, in the absence of a strategic plan, that absence of leadership creates a vacuum that the staff will probably fill. That's not just bad. That's everywhere.
Well, they're doing their job and they're getting paid for it.
Right.
And that's what I see as a flaw, is that, granted, the staff are professionals and they know what the hell they're doing. And we don't.
But they, on the other hand, don't have the legitimacy to do the strategic plan, or to do the vision. That's not for staff. That's the elected. That's the people who are elected by the public to see.
And we are getting off track on some of these, but I don't think that we could get on the right track unless you went through all this with us. So I appreciate that.
Well, any road will get us to where we're going. I'm going to turn to the roads guy for the last comment before we listen to the public comment. What do you want to say?
We're 5 minutes over.
Yep, right. Yeah, we love it.
No, I'm just saying, you got a person over here that wants parks, and he's fighting for it. You've got a person down here that works for the schools, she's fighting for it. This is not what we're here for. We're here to set a strategic plan. And you just can't go for one thing. You've got to have an open mind on everything that's coming up. I've been here a few years, and I'm not sure how many more I can take. But I think that Judy is sitting over here, and I'm sure they want to say something before we leave, and then we're going to be 15, 20 minutes into our next meeting, then a break, and move along.
Oh, no break today.
Well, we will take one.
All right, thank you, Al. You're right. So we're going to wrap up. Thank you, Larry. I hope this was helpful. It certainly was helpful for, I think, us in understanding this first step. And I'm excited about this process that we're going to do together. With that, we'll go to new business B, items for action. There are none. That brings us to item 7, public statement 2, limited to 3 minutes on any topic. So if you'd like to address the board, is the microphone up?
It is.
Would you mind if I just said, Ryan?
Well, folks can't hear you if you don't use
Can I get the microphone
microphone.
for her? It's a wireless cordless mic.
She's not going to be on camera.
We're not recording anyway.
We are recording.
We're recording, but not visual.
No, that was our plan. We're not live streaming.
That's recording.
We're recording, so it will be posted, but it is not live.
That's fine. No
You'll see it
problem.
tomorrow.
First of all, I want to say I appreciate this process. It's very important. I appreciate the leadership, Ryan, that you bring to this, and Larry, it'll be good to have you on board. I just hope that the plan will lead to, and maybe I'm wrong in this, but some recommendations for action, right? So we have all these ideas and all these things that we want to do, and it all sounds good on paper, and it really looks like a nice report, but I think that it's critical that we have some follow-up, which leads to action. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Judy. Any other public comment?
Interesting stuff, thank you. I just had a couple of questions. It says that you're going to involve staff, community, and stockholders. What exactly does
Stakeholders?
Stakeholders, sorry, yes, stakeholders. What exactly is that?
I think he's looking at you.
Folks who have a vested stake in the success of the community. So it could be, I'm sorry,
An example, maybe?
people who work here, people who live here,
Business owners.
business owners.
So it would still be community and staff.
Yeah, there are folks who are stakeholders who don't fit into those other categories, who aren't necessarily residents and wouldn't fit into those categories. So stakeholders sort of broadens the definition.
I guess, could you give me an example of that?
Right, a business owner.
Like the owners of Specs, that they didn't.
No, Spags lives here. I'm saying a business owner who doesn't live here. So you can have a business in Bath, right? So you care about Bath, but you live in DeWitt.
Gotcha. And, Kate, with what you said, I thought that was very interesting, because there is a lot of coordination and cooperation with, like the township and the library. And I agree, there could be a lot more, like maybe, coordination, cooperation with, the school, for one, maybe, the different organizations, the volunteer organizations. I think the more people's brains you put on it, the better results you're going to get. I think also that I was a little disappointed that when, Larry, I just heard him call you Larry, so I...
That's good enough.
Larry, when you asked your question before the flags were handed out, that there weren't more actual suggestions or questions related on what you actually thought about what you wanted or what questions you wanted to ask the community, and there were none. Nobody had a question to ask the community.
Well, that'll come. I think we're just trying to hash out a way to do this process.
I am completely. Thank you very much. Madam Chief, I will write.
Thank you, Meg. Any other public? Seeing none. Board member comments, can we agree to pass our comments, or does someone burn in for something to say? You'll have another opportunity at the next meeting to say all you want.
Can I make a motion to adjourn?
Sure can.
If you want to play it out.
I was going to say, now looks like you need the...
All right, are you making it?
I'm making a motion.
Are you seconding it? All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll take a voice vote. All those in favor of adjournment, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Please take as much of your materials
If you want to sit down.
and